These are the best settings for Warzone on console. Not only will I give you the best in-game settings, but more importantly, I will give you the best dashboard level settings for both PlayStation and Xbox. Whether you haven't updated your settings for a couple seasons, or maybe you just came back for Rebirth Island, following this step-by-step is so essential to get the best movement, more aim assist, and more importantly, more frames so your game feels smoother. Make sure to follow this guide step by step and double check everything from your audio to your controller and more, because little settings here and there can make a wild difference on your gameplay, and this possibly could change your overall KD or your overall enjoyment of the game. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Fume. You see, when I was active duty, I had a lot of buddies that picked up some bad habits to help cope with the sleepless nights and the stress. Well, maybe you can relate. That's where Fume comes in. Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing that bad habit easy, but it's done so in a guilt-free way. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting to give your fingers a lot to do, and is helpful for de-stressing while breaking your habit. Now, I've tried Fume for myself and my favorite flavor is crisp mint, but honestly, this product isn't for me. It's for someone possibly like you, a friend, or a family member who is struggling to break that bad habit. They have over 150,000 customers, thousands of success stories, and even some from the Academy. We worked with them in the past and we had rave reviews from members of the Academy who are using this to help kick their bad habit. Join Fume in breaking up these destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/IceManIsaac or scan the QR code and use IceManIsaac to get 10% off your Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use the code IceManIsaac to save 10% off your order, or you can click the link down in the pinned comment and the description. Huge thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. Now, a very important disclaimer before we get started. I am gaming in 4K 120 Hertz, but if you look in the background, you might be like, that doesn't look so sharp. Or as you look through some of these settings, you might be like, that text doesn't look super sharp. On my screen, it is stunning. Okay, it is simply a limitation of me gaming in 4K 120, and my capture card can only record in 1080p 60. That is simply a capture card limitation. Once I buy Elgato's new 4KX, I will be able to both game in 4K 120 and record in 4K 120. But just so you guys can see, and I'm showing you settings that will work for you on your system. As I go in, you will see I am gaming in 3840 by 2160 at 120 Hertz. The recording here might look a little bit off, but that's simply a recording limit on my end. What you all are seeing on your end will be the same beautiful 4K 120 or 1440p 120 or 4K 60 that you will expect to see. I just, rather than setting up settings, ideally for a video to look good, I want the settings exactly how I would set them so they look perfect for you guys as you're matching them step by step. Without further ado, let's get into the optimized in-game settings. It is so important that you follow these step by step, because honestly, if you don't have optimized settings, you're not going to get the best aim assist, the best movement that you see high-level players using. And it's almost unfair that they don't have these settings by default, because the average player needs to be taking advantage of it, okay? I use the default button layout. In tomorrow's video, make sure you turn notifications on, because it is a game changer. We're going to be talking about some ways that you can move across the map even better and faster, combining whether it's a regular controller, a SCUF, and something else that will completely change the game. I'm excited for tomorrow's video. Make sure you have notifications on for that. Okay, we have the L1 button ping, flip all set off. I have the default layout, and then I also have controller vibration turned off, because I don't want my controller shaking while I'm in a tense gunfight. Where things really start to change is the dead zone inputs. I have my left stick set to 2. Make sure you open this up, because by default it's set to 10, and it's going to ruin your game, because we know, and if you don't know, this is a really important note, you do not get rotational aim assist unless you are strafing while you're shooting. Even if you are strafing into a wall, if someone were to jump across this lane without me tracking them perfectly with my right stick, simply by strafing in any direction, it will help my player pull on to where that player is aiming. So why do I have it set to 2? When I have it set to 2 and I look straight down and I see that pretty birdie, my feet aren't moving. But with just the slightest amount of pull, I will start strafing. Some players are even so heavy on this with always wanting to make sure they get rotational aim assist, they set this to 0. So even just the slightest amount, you will see my feet are kind of moving just a little bit right there. And that means I'm already getting rotational aim assist. So if you are really disciplined as a player, like myself, I've been, using and abusing rotational aim assist for years. Make sure you set it to something low so you're getting it with just a little bit of stick pull. But if you aren't taking advantage of this, try setting it to 0. Now, you may give away your position as you stomp around a little bit, but it is a good habit to always be strafing while shooting. Now, why do I have my left stick max changed? Well, I've been slowly bringing this down from 90 to 80 to 70 and now 60 because the way that automatic tactical sprint works, and we're going to set that here in a second, is you're allowed to slow walk to a certain extent, but then watch my left thumb. As I press forward to a certain amount, I will go into the automatic tactical sprint stance. So what we can do is, by setting this lower from 80 to 90, or 90 to 80 to 70 to now 60, I'm able to more quickly get into that automatic tactical sprint when I want it. And honestly, you're either slowly strafing or you're full sprinting. And I think it's a great way to get quicker into your automatic tactical sprint, kind of like mouse and keyboard players. When they press W, the millisecond that they press it, that gun comes up and they start zooming. So give it a try. It'll take a little bit to get used to, but you can slowly find yourself into faster tac sprints so you'll get less dead slides by bringing that left stick max down. Now, I've done the exact same thing for my right stick. I bring it down to 2, and when I bring it down to 2, as you'll see, my left stick, as you look at that center dot, or my right stick, is not moving. I don't have stick drift, but just the slightest amount of movement allows me to get that really refined aim that I want. Some people like to bring it all the way down to 0. I don't, to where they always have at least a small amount of stick drift, so they're always aiming. But in general, make sure you have your min stick drifts brought down from the default of 10. Okay, if you have too much stick drift by bringing it down to 0 or 2 or 1, bring it up, or maybe even looking into getting a new controller. But these being set to a default of 10 will make your aim feel so clunky. Make sure you bring those down. From there, I have the max set to 100. I have the L2 dead zone set to 4, which doesn't really matter because I have digital triggers, which are the mouse clicks, which allow me to rapid fire on especially semi-automatic weapons. Okay, let's start moving forward. From there, over to the aiming. What I really suggest for default players who maybe aren't experienced and haven't started experimenting with their own aim assist, I play this game at a pretty high level. I still use 66.8, but it only matters when I combine it with dynamic. 66.8 is really slow if you're using standard, but dynamic allows me to move quickly, aim quickly, move across the map, but then still have that really refined aim that I need from that dynamic response curve. So for me, I run in my aiming 6.6, an ADS sensitivity multiplier of 0.8. I don't mess with any of these. I leave them all default. I don't mess with the vertical aim axis, any of this, tactical stance, nothing. And I set this to dynamic. From there, as I move down, I have everything set to instant and then off. Make sure you have your aim assist set on. Some people play around with Black Ops. I don't think it makes any difference. I use default. That's what most players use. And then from there, I don't use anything in motion sensor aiming. Moving over to gameplay, this is really important. I have automatic tactical sprint on, which allows me to move faster across the map. Slide maintain sprint, I have off. There are some issues with like mantling and dead slides if you have that set on. Auto move forward, I have off. Single tap run, I have on because there are times where auto tac sprint doesn't kick in, and single tap run brings us to a tactical sprint, even though you have single tap sprint and then single tap run is technically single tap tactical sprint. From there, I have all of my mantle settings turned off. I don't like to auto mantle into gunfights. Bringing that hip fire out in the middle of an ADS, as you're mantling up onto something accidentally, will get you killed. I have a scuff controller. I have paddles on my back. If I need to mantle something, I will just spam X on my paddle in the back, or I'll spam jump. I don't suggest having any of these on. Grounded mantle, we talked about in a previous movement video, can make for some pretty sweet double mantle and fast movements, but I think that's only for very, very advanced players to use something like that. From here, I have slide dive behavior set to hybrid. Okay, and the reason I have it set to hybrid is it is so important in Warzone, multiplayer not so much, to be able to dive. Okay, so hybrid, what that allows you to do is as you press circle, or as I press the paddle on the back of my controller, the instant that I press it, it starts a slide. Okay, I do not like rocking some of the other settings because, for example, it defaults to tap to slide. That does not slide instantly. It slides when you slide and then release. So watch the difference. This is tap to slide, right? So if you don't press it fast enough, you'll dive. So it's tap, release, slide, tap, release, slide, and it makes it feel really clunky. So what some people suggest doing is going over and rocking slide only, which means the millisecond that I touch it, tap, it'll start sliding. Tap, start sliding. But now there's no way to dive. So the benefit is a new setting that just came out last season called hybrid, where as I tap it, I instantly slide. But if I'm holding in L3, it allows me to dive. So in Urzikstan or Vondel or Rebirth Island, if you want to dive and then pull your chute to make a jump across the building, it takes a bit to get used to, but now you can hold L3 and tap and it'll dive, or you can just tap circle and it'll dive, and it'll slide. It takes a little bit to get used to. We're gonna have something in tomorrow's video that will actually be the benefit of both, but there's a long explanation to it, so I can't go into it now. Make sure to have those notifications on. But in general, that is what I suggest is running hybrid. If you don't care about diving, use slide only. Please, for the love of God, do not use tap to slide, because it makes it to where your slide cancel is really clunky, because it's not tap to slide, it is tap and release to slide, which is going to cause dead slides, bad movement. It just doesn't feel good. Run either hybrid or slide only. Okay, from there I have plunging underwater set to free. Parachute automatic behavior I have set off because I want to be able to drop close to the ground and pull my parachute. Sprinting door bash we have on. Ledge climb behavior I have set to mantle because I don't like doing that whole pull-up mechanic. For combat behaviors I have set hold, sprint, tactical focus. Equipment behavior is set to hold. All of this is pretty much set to default except for weapon mount delay exit. Basically, it says how long do you want to be pressing the move button before you exit a mount? And for me, I want it immediate, right? Because I don't want any delay. If I say I want off this mount, let's say someone, like I see 3 people swing around this corner, I don't want there to be a delay when I back up and say I want off, right? And so that's what that allows me to do, is it basically says immediately, if I am mounted, it is instantly pulling me off that mount. Tactical stance activation I have turned off. I tend to activate this on accident sometimes, and I never use tactical stance, especially in Warzone, because as you're sliding in Warzone, you can aim down sight, but yeah, it's not worth running tactical stance unless you have like a meme build for it. Interact behavior I have set to prioritize interact. That's going to allow me to tap quickly to open up doors and open up crates, but it will also allow me to tap and reload. Just be careful. If you do need to reload, like inside of a vehicle, or you need to reload on top of a pile of loot, you will have to hold square to activate the reload. Otherwise, tapping will simply pick up the loot. Armor plate, make sure you have apply all set up. ADS stick swap, I don't have on. Backpack set directional. Depleted ammo weapon switch, I have turned off. If I ever run out of ammo, I'm tracking that because I'm always tracking how much ammo I have left in my gun. I want to manually swap because I don't want the gun swapping for me, because then it'll end up doing a double swap, and I just hate that. C4 detonation. C4s are back in the meta. I have mine set to 1 by 1, so that way when I throw one C4, I can double click square and it will blow up that C4. Sometimes mid-air, sometimes not, but I don't want them all grouped. Otherwise, it'll be a kind of a pain to throw and detonate those. Manual fire behavior I set to press. Akimbo I've set to independent. If you're ever using, a fun akimbo build, you can have it set to paired, and if you press R2 or L2, it'll fire both at the same time. So I've seen some people run it where they run paired and they just run L2, R2, L2, L2, R2, L2, and it'll kind of allow for a little bit of rapid fire there. Camera recenter I have turned off. I don't want it doing it for me. I want to recenter my camera by myself. Everything else here is set to pretty much default from there. Okay, let's go ahead and get over to graphic settings. Now for graphic settings, I have on-demand texture streaming turned off. We don't want any of those processes happening in the background that could slow down our game. We have world motion blur and weapon motion blur turned off because, I mean, look at that. We don't want any of that blur happening while we're in the middle of a gunfight. We need to see our opponents clearer. We have film grain turned off as well. Make sure you have depth of field turned off because we don't want any of that blur. We have fidelity cast turned on and set to 90. I set this anywhere from, probably 50 to 100. Totally up to you with what you want to set. I've always set mine to 90. It makes the game sharper. So it's honestly kind of ironic. All these are making it blurrier, and Fidelity FX Cast is making it sharper, which we want because that's going to bring out the outlines of our opponent and help with our tracking. From sustainability, I have my eco mode set to preset. RIP the earth. I got to win my gunfights. For the 120 refresh rate, I'm currently in game, but I have that set to on. My field of view is set to 120. Sometimes I set it a little bit lower to 115 as well. But make sure you have your ADS field of view set to affected. Okay, that means as we aim down sight, our field of view is going to stay wide, and it's not going to tunnel vision in, because as it tunnel visions in, it's going to make the recoil feel so much more jarring. The more zoomed in you are as you're shooting, it's going to make everything feel like it's shaking more because it's taking up more of your screen. The same thing can be said for over in our graphic settings. go into the exact same tab, field of view, make sure our weapon field of view is set to wide. That's going to make the gun feel smaller inside of our screen. And as the gun is feeling smaller inside of our screen and shaking a smaller portion of our screen, it's going to feel like we have less visual recoil. If the gun is larger in your screen and shaking, it's going to feel like you have more recoil than if it's smaller and shaking the same amount, just because it's taking up that much more of your screen. Okay, for third person field of view, they have the third person mode. I have it set to wide. Exact same thing that we mentioned earlier. Camera movement, we don't want the screen shaking and everything going crazy as we're moving across the map. We have that set to least on both. I don't have inverted flashbang set on. If you do have it set on, when you get hit by a flashbang, your screen will turn black. But for me, I have trauma from years of playing Warzone. If my screen turns black, I think I have a dev error. Okay, third person ADS transition, I just have set to third person, and then spectator camera I have set to game perspective, so I'm not looking out the little helmet cam. From there, I have my brightness set to 55 to help bring out some of those shadows. You can also mess with the gamma on your monitor or the black level on your monitor as well to help bring out those shadows. I would highly encourage you to do that. Okay, from there, we'll just go ahead and go into the audio settings. For me, I have my TV mix set to TV. My favorite three are TV, headphones, and soundbar, but I seem to like TV the most because it has the tightest dynamic range. Meaning, basically, if you were to have something set like cinema or home theater, you would have this wide expanse of extremely loud explosions like you're listening to IMAX and then pitter-patter footsteps in the distance. But I don't want pitter-patter footsteps, okay? I want elephants stampeding near me if a team is running up behind me. So I have it set to TV, which will allow that footstep to be brought up and that loud explosion to be brought down. Everything might be a little bit louder and kind of muddier, but at the end of the day, I'm going to hear those quiet sounds. From there, make sure to click show more. Turn off your gameplay music volume. I can't tell you how many VODs I've reviewed of members of the Academy, and they're in the final circle, and I hear bum 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 bum. Turn that off. You need to hear footsteps, okay? Dialogue volume, that's the announcer in your ear. Enemy dropping in, enemy UAV. It needs to be there, but it doesn't need to be deafening that it covers up footsteps down, so I bring that down to 40. Effects, I have set to 100, and then everything else I have set to 0. Voice chat volume I have set to 20 because I don't want that blocking out. Some people will like run around the map and just go to try to like mask their sound, and it's really obnoxious, so I have it set down. Voice chat I have on. Obviously, all of this is dependent on how you want to play with your friends or if you want to interact with the audience. Set those as you see fit. Microphone level, I have mine set all the way to 0 because I talk through Discord when I'm gaming on console, so I don't need my in-game microphone. Subtitles, that's all up to you. Reduced tinnitus sound, I do have set on because I don't like that ear-piercing sound. And then I have my war tracks turned off. I've seen some people setting this to classic for classic hit marker sounds if you do like the OG hit marker sounds, but that's totally optional on your end. From there, let's get over to interface. This will actually change a lot of things in the way your game looks. So once again, you can set all these text size how you want. When I go into color customization, I start to make my colors a little bit more bold. So it defaults to kind of a dull yellow. I set mine higher to more of a neon yellow. Same thing for the blue. It was like kind of like a pale yellow. I like to set mine to a little bit brighter yellow. Same thing for the green. It was like a dark green. I set it to a bold green. Same thing with the red. So up to you. You can change those how you want. I don't like going crazy and going for like deuteranopia or tritanopia or anything like that. But what I do is I go down into the color filter. I set the filter to 2. I set it to both. And then I bring my world color and interface color intensity all the way to the max. What that's going to do is it's going to make my game look a little more bright and vibrant. And then on my monitor, I'm doing some saturation corrections. And then for you all, I'm doing some corrections with a filter on OBS. So my game looks like this, which still looks great. On my monitor, it looks like this. And then I add a filter in OBS to make it match my monitor. So feel free. Every TV has a game mode. Okay, you can turn on game mode, and that not only will add auto low latency mode, it'll make the picture process faster, but oftentimes game mode, especially if you tweak with it, will add more saturation, and you can boost the black level so it brings up those shadows so you can see into the enemies, see in darker places. And I really suggest you do that because that's what I do with my monitor, and it's what I also do for you all through my filters. Moving on, let's get through the rest of the interface. When I go through the interface, I have my minimap set to square. Minimap rotation on, horizontal compass set on, and then make sure, set your crosshairs to static. Now, as you move through the game, your crosshairs actually will like shake. Like if you snap to a direction, it'll snap, and then the crosshair will do like a little shake snake motion of weapon sway. Yes, it's realistic, But for me, especially when I play mouse and key, even when I was playing mouse and key on console, it messes with my brain too much because I try to autocorrect for where it's shaking, but then the shaking stops, but then its shaking starts again. It just makes the game feel so clunky. And this is an Infinity Wardism that they added with MW2, and they're starting to remove them all slowly, very slowly, Sledgehammer. But you got to turn it off. Okay, you got to set it to static. Even though, yes, technically it's not 100% accurate for where your crosshair is actually going. For me, it makes my aim more consistent because I don't feel like my crosshairs are as floaty. Hit marker visuals, I have set to on and on. Player name set to full name. All this stuff you can have as you see fit. Nothing really too important here. But I do suggest going down here and turning on server latency, packet loss, and then if you're having a lot of issues, you can turn on the connection meter as well to kind of see what's happening with your packet loss. Now, from there, you can go in and you can change your menu prompts over to controller, or if you play mouse and keyboard, you can change it to keyboard and mouse. I have mine set to automatic, whether I'm playing one or the other, because sometimes I do play mouse and keyboard over on console. But I have gameplay tips and tool tips set to off because I don't want any of those spamming me. By now, I know what's going on with the game. All right, let's get into the advanced settings over on the PlayStation dashboard. Xbox will be next. If you guys have learned something new or you changed any settings that you didn't realize you had wrong, do me a favor, drop a like on this video and send it to your friends because maybe you're not shooting super straight because you had the aim assist settings wrong. Make sure your squad has the right settings as well. Now let's get into the PlayStation settings. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the settings, which you do by going to your dashboard, going all the way up to the top where it says settings. You're gonna click on settings. You're gonna go down to screen and video. From there, let's go to our video output, and you want to double check and make sure your current video output signal is getting out what you need. So for me, it's perfect. I have 3840 by 2160, variable refresh rate anywhere from 48 hertz all the way up to 120 hertz. Now, once again, it looks not super crisp on your end solely because of the capture card. It looks beautiful on my end. I just want you guys to see the exact settings that I have set, just so you know that it's going to work exactly as I have set on your system as well. Okay, now how do we make sure we get the right settings? So for me, I want my resolution to be 2160 or 4K. So that's what I set. You can set yours to 1440p. You might have to do test 1440p output because a lot of you game on 1440p monitors. It'll flash on and off, and then it will ask if you have, correctly see it, you confirm it, and then 1440p will become an option there. Now, variable refresh rate, that's all dependent on whether or not your TV or monitor supports it. What I would highly suggest that you do is go in and look up your TV, your specific TV model number, your specific monitor model number, and then set the settings based off of a YouTube guide or Reddit guide, something most people have gone through and tested, what's gonna give the best refresh rate, what's gonna give the least amount of ghosting when it comes to overdrive settings. I'm not gonna get into all that, that's pretty advanced. Just look up your TV or monitor and look up the best settings for gaming. Okay, mine supports variable refresh rate, so I have that turned on. You can mess around with applying it to unsupported games. Warzone is a supported game, so that's what we're focused on today. I'm just gonna leave that unchecked. I have my 120 hertz output set to automatic, and as you can see from all my gameplay settings, it does apply. ALLM is auto low latency mode. You want that set to automatic if it supports it. Basically, that will be your PlayStation telling your TV, hey, we're gonna go into game mode and throw on auto low latency mode, because if you're gonna game on your PlayStation and it's set on like cinema mode or something, a lot of times there's some AI upscaling that happens for both the sound and the video that doesn't matter when you're watching a movie, but it will make it significantly more sluggish when you're gaming, and we don't want that. We want that signal out as fast as we possibly can, so we have auto low latency mode turned on. And then a very important one right here, video transfer rate. You want this set to automatic. If you have this set to automatic and your screen starts flashing or it isn't working, make sure you are using an HDMI 2.1 cable. If you're not, you won't be able to get HDMI at 4K at 120 hertz. You can see here, click learn more. If you have it set to -1, you lose the ability to set 4K 120 hertz or 4K 60 hertz with deep color, or I even believe you can't even run HDR as well. Make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable, and also make sure you are plugging into the HDMI 2.1 port on your TV. Some TVs only have one port that supports 120 hertz, while the rest only supports 60 hertz. So make sure you are plugging into the correct monitor port or TV port as well. If you are, and you are using HDMI 2.1 cable, you should have that set to automatic and it should work. I have HDR turned off. I don't like that messing with my colors. It also makes it more consistent for my viewer. And then everything else here I have set to automatic and automatic. You can double check that all by going here and making sure it does match. And for me, it matches beautifully. All right, let's move on from there. From there, we're gonna back out. We're gonna go to save data in game app settings. We're gonna scroll down to game presets, and we're gonna make sure we have our performance mode set to performance, not resolution. Because, at least in this case, yes, we want our game to look beautiful. I love my game looking in 4K, but at the end of the day, I would rather have it downscale my graphics a little bit so I'm getting 120 hertz rather than a native beautiful graphics, because we're playing an FPS here. We need higher frame rates. Now, some people do suggest also going down into your accessory setting, going to your controller, or just in general, and you can go into your advanced and turn off Bluetooth. Some people have said they have noticed their controller is a little bit snappier with wired, which is what I've done since I'm always sitting at my desk anyways. And that might be something to try out if you are a desk gamer. If you're, sitting at your desk, you're already going to have it plugged in anyways, and you're using headphones that are going to be plugged in, maybe you don't need Bluetooth. But that's just something to try out. If you feel like there's a little bit too much delay, you can try turning off Bluetooth, or you can keep Bluetooth on and you can turn off Bluetooth individually inside of the controller settings as well. That's totally up to you. That might just be one of those that's like kind of pseudoscience based off of like, placebo, but I have done it and my game runs great on console. So I have gone through and I have turned off all my Bluetooth and I run with my controller wired on PlayStation. But that wraps up our PlayStation in-game and console settings. We're going to head over to Xbox, but before you guys head out, if you are a PlayStation player, make sure to drop a subscription. We have an amazing video coming tomorrow, more videos coming later in the week, and all things to help you get better at Warzone. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe on your way out. All right, now let's get into the advanced Xbox settings. So for that, you're going to go up to the top of your dashboard. You're going to go to settings, and then we're going to go into TV and display options. Now, before we do this, a very important disclaimer. One, make sure your TV is set on game mode. Okay, we mentioned this over on the PlayStation setting. Make sure it's set to game mode because that will allow auto low latency mode to kick in, which means it won't be doing any upscaling. It won't be doing anything to clean up the picture. It's just going to give you that raw picture as fast as it possibly can for the lowest possible input latency. From there, we mentioned in the past, we can do things like up our saturation, or we can up our brightness or our black levels to help bring up those shadows. But most importantly, make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable. If you're using a cable that's maybe you brought out of a closet or you bought online, so it's a longer cable to reach your monitor or TV, it might not be HDMI 2.1. And if it's not, that means you're not going to be able to get the 120 hertz on 4K or the 144 hertz over on 1440p. Make sure you're using an HDMI 2.1. Okay, so you're going to go into your display options, go into settings, go into display options, and the way you can really tell is go into your 4K TV details. You can look and it'll tell you what is supported. So it says my TV supports 4K Ultra HD at 120 hertz. Now, if yours doesn't display that, but you know your TV or monitor supports that resolution, that's simply telling you that that HDMI cable that you're using is not supportive, not necessarily that your TV isn't supporting it. So if it's not showing up how it should, make sure either one, you're using an HDMI 2.1 cable, and if you are using an HDMI 2.1 cable, make sure that cable is plugged into the correct port on your TV, because oftentimes only one port on the TV will support 4K 120, but the rest only support 4K 60. So double check all that, make sure it applies here correctly, and then we can go and start changing some settings. So then from there, I'm going to set to 4K Ultra HD because my monitor is 4K. And then I'm going to change my refresh rate up to 120 hertz. From there, we're going to go down into device control. And if you want, you can turn on HDMI CEC, which basically allows consumer electronics control where the TV can control the Xbox, they can turn each other on, etc. I don't have that turned on for my use case. But what is important to change is go over to video modes. Make sure you have all of these ticked off that you possibly can tick off, except for a couple. Okay, so I have 50 hertz turned on. I also, more importantly, have auto low latency mode turned on, which will basically have the Xbox tell the TV that, yo, we're going into game mode whenever I turn on my Xbox, which you want. I have variable refresh rate turned on, which basically means that my refresh rate, as long as your TV or monitor is capable of this, if it can't reach 120 hertz in the moment, it'll bring it down to 110 hertz, 100 hertz. That way it prevents some pretty nasty screen tearing. From there, I have allow 4K turned on, and I do not game with HDR on just for consumer reasons, content reasons. So if you want HDR, that's totally up to you, but most people suggest leaving that off for competitive FPS gaming. But that about wraps up everything you can do on both Xbox PlayStation, and in-game settings. If you guys have made any of these changes and they have helped improve your game, whether you feel your movement's more fluid, your aim's a little bit snappier, or more importantly, your game is looking how it should look, do me a favor and drop a like on this video, subscribe for even more, turn those notifications on because we have some really special videos coming up. And a huge thank you again to Fume for sponsoring today's video. If you guys want to catch me live, make sure to join me over on Twitch. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace.